Good morning, students. Today we will start the chapter of anatomy of flowering plants. Anatomy is the study of internal structure of plants and animals. Anatomy is if we study the internal structure of plant and animals. Tissue is a group of cells having common origin and function. Group of cells having common origin and function is tissue. Now, based on the capacity of cell division, we have two types of tissues that are meristematic tissue and permanent tissue. Meristematic tissues are those tissues where active cell division and growth take place. So those tissues where active cell division and growth occurs are meristematic tissues, while those tissues where the cells lose the capacity to divide are the permanent tissue. In meristematic tissue, there are active cell division and growth of the cells, whereas in permanent tissue, when the primary tissue, it loses the capacity to divide, when the meristematic tissue loses the capacity to divide, it becomes permanent. Now, further, meristematic tissue is further of three types that are apical meristem, intercalary meristem, and secondary or lateral meristem. Apical meristem, let's talk about apical meristem. It occurs at root and shoot tip. Now, if it occurs at root tip, it is known as root apical meristem. So, root apical meristem, which occurs at the tip of the root, and if it occurs at the shoot tip, it is known as shoot apical meristem, which occur at tip of shoot. Some cells are left behind from the shoot apical meristem and they form axillary bud, which is present in the axil of the leaf. For example, if this is the stem, then this is the leaf which will arise from the node. Then in the axil of the leaf, there would be a bud which would be known as axillary bud. So this axillary bud is formed when some cells are left behind from shoot apical meristem and they form the axillary bud. This axillary bud gives rise to flower or a branch. Now, further, if we look at the intercalary meristem, it occurs between the mature tissue. So in between the mature tissue occurs the intercalary meristem. And when herbivores, they graze away the grass, they remove the grass by eating, the grass regenerates with the help of intercalary meristem. So regeneration of removed part of grass by herbivores occurs due to intercalary meristem. Now let us talk about secondary, third type of meristem, that is secondary or lateral meristem. Secondary or lateral meristem, it occurs in mature regions of root and shoot. Mature regions of root and shoot. It is to be remembered that both apical meristem, which we have talked earlier, plus intercalary meristem combined are called as primary meristem. They both are known as primary meristem. Why primary meristem? Because they appear early in plant life. Early in plant life. Whereas secondary meristem or lateral meristem occurs late in the plant life and it occurs in mature region of root and shoot. This secondary meristem this secondary or lateral meristem is seen in gymnosperm as well as dicots. Example of the secondary meristem are fascicular cambium and cork cambium. Fascicular cambium and cork cambium are the examples of secondary meristem. Now let us talk about permanent tissue. Permanent tissue is of two types: simple permanent tissue and complex permanent tissue. Simple permanent tissue are those tissues which is made up of one type of cell. Tissues made up of similar type of cells. Whereas complex permanent tissue is the tissue which is formed by more than one type of cell. More than one type of cell. So simple tissue is made up of similar type of cell, one kind of cell, and complex tissue is made up of more than one type of cell. Simple permanent tissue is further of three types, which are parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Cell of parenchyma are isodiametric, spherical, round, or polygonal in shape. Cell wall is made up of cellulose and cell wall is thin. Cells are closely packed or have little intercellular space. So parenchyma, the cells are isodiametric, spherical, oval or polygonal. The cell wall is made up of cellulose and it is very thin, and cells are closely packed and have little intercellular space. Now let us talk about collenchyma. In collenchyma, cells are thickened at the corner. Cells are thickened at the corner due to deposition of cellulose, hemicellulose and pectin. Cellulose, hemicellulose and pectin. So if these are the cell, this is a cell, it would be thickened at the corner. See, I'm drawing this, it is thickened at the corner. And this thickening is of cellulose, thickened corners. This thickening is of cellulose, hemicellulose or pectin. Now, let us talk about further features. Cell can be oval, spherical or polygonal. And the function of collenchyma is giving mechanical support to the plant. Giving mechanical support to the plant, such as young leaf, giving support to the young leaf and petiole of the leaf, etc. Now, let us talk about sclerenchyma. Sclerenchyma, out of parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma, sclerenchyma is a dead cell while both parenchyma and collenchyma are living. These both are living while sclerenchyma is a dead cell. Sclerenchyma, it has thick cell wall made up of lignin. Thick cell wall made up of lignin. So cell wall is thickened and it is made up of lignin and it is a dead tissue. So now let us look at type of tissue of sclerenchyma. Now sclerenchyma is further divided into two types of tissues. That are fibers and sclerids. Let us talk about them. Fibers, they are thick-walled, elongated and pointed cell which occur in groups. Let us draw its diagram. So it would be a thick-walled cell with pointed ends. So you can see I'm drawing the structure of a fiber. So this is the structure of a fiber, which is thick-walled and pointed cell. Now let us talk about sclerids. Sclerids are spherical, oval, with narrow lumen, and it forms the fruit wall of nut, pulp of fruit like guava, pear, seed coat of legumes, and leaves of tea. So sclerids, they are spherical. Now let us draw the structure of sclerids. This is a sclerid which is spherical and this is its narrow lumen of the sclerid. And it forms the fruit wall of nut, pulp of fruits like guava, pear, seed coat of leguminous plants, and leaves of tea. So these are the two type of sclerenchymatous tissue, that are fiber and sclerids. Function of sclerenchyma is again to provide mechanical support to the plant. Now let us talk about complex permanent tissue. Complex permanent tissue is the tissue which is formed from more than one type of cell, as we have discussed earlier. It is of two types, xylem and phloem. Now let us first talk about xylem. Xylem functions as conducting tissue for water and mineral. So it conducts water and mineral from the root to the stem. Xylem is composed of four kinds of elements. So xylem has four kinds of elements, which are tracheids, vessels, xylem fiber, and xylem parenchyma. Let us first talk about tracheids. Tracheids, they are elongated tube-like structures. Elongated, they are dead tube-like structures with a lignified and tapering wall. Structures with lignified and tapering ends. So they have a elongated tube-like structure, they are dead, they have a lignified wall, and they have a tapering end. Let us talk about vessels. Vessels, they are long, cylindrical structures, again with a lignified wall and a large central cavity. A large central cavity. Vessels, they are the characteristic feature of angiosperms, because characteristic feature of angiosperm, because very important line, gymnosperm lack vessels. Gymnosperms, they do not have vessels. Talking about the third element, that is xylem fiber. You can remember in xylem fiber that it has a thick wall structure. Last element is xylem parenchyma, which is the only living element of the xylem. So it is a living element, the only living element of the xylem, and it has thin cell wall. It does not have thick cell wall, and it is not lignified. Instead, it is made up of cellulose, and it stores food material like tannins in plants. Primary xylem is of two types. Protoxylem and metaxylem. Protoxylem is the first formed xylem, and metaxylem is later formed primary xylem. So the xylem which is formed earlier is protoxylem, and the xylem which is formed later is the metaxylem. Now in stem what happens that protoxylem lies toward the center, so this is the protoxylem, while the metaxylem lies towards the periphery. So this is the metaxylem. So mx, this is the metaxylem, and px is the protoxylem. So in stem, protoxylem lies toward the center and metaxylem lies towards the periphery. As you can see, protoxylem is towards the center, whereas metaprotoxylem is toward the center, whereas metaxylem is towards the periphery. Such type of condition in which protoxylem is toward the center and metaxylem towards the periphery is known as endarch. It is known as endarch. Such arrangement is known as endarch. Whereas in roots and leaves, in roots only, in roots, the opposite happens. So opposite to the stem happens. So in roots, what happens that metaxylem lies towards the center, whereas protoxylem lies towards the periphery. Such condition in which metaxylem lies towards the center and protoxylem towards the periphery, such type of arrangement is known as exarch, and exarch arrangement is seen in roots. Endarch is seen in stem and exarch is seen in root. In endarch, protoxylem lies toward the center, metaxylem towards the periphery. In exarch, metaxylem lies toward the center and protoxylem towards the periphery. Now let us talk about phloem. Phloem is also known as bast. Phloem transports food from the leaves to the other part. Similar to xylem, it also consists of 4 elements that are sieve tube elements, companion cells, phloem parenchyma, and phloem fiber. In gymnosperm, sieve tube elements and companion cells are absent. Instead of this, albuminous cells and sieve cells occur. So instead of companion cells, gymnosperm have albuminous cell, and instead of sieve tube elements, gymnosperm have sieve cells. Now let us talk about each part in detail. First of all, let us talk about sieve tube elements. Sieve tube elements are tube-like structures associated with companion cells. Now, why are sieve tube elements associated with companion cells? Sieve tube elements are associated with companion cells because sieve tube elements lack nucleus. They do not have nucleus. So, all the function of sieve tube is controlled by the nucleus of companion cells. All the function of sieve tube elements are controlled by nucleus of companion cells. So since the sieve tube elements do not have a nucleus, all its function is controlled by sieve tube companion cells. So since all its function are controlled by companion cell, so it is closely associated with companion cells. Now let us talk about companion cells. Companion cells, they are parenchymatous cells which are closely associated with sieve tube cells, which I have already told you why. And the main function of companion cell is to maintain pressure gradient in the sieve tubes. Now let us talk about phloem parenchyma. Phloem parenchyma is elongated, tapering, cylindrical cell in which cell wall is made up of cellulose. Cell wall made of cellulose. And we know that out of all the components of phloem, only one component is dead, which is phloem fiber. Rest all components are living. Only phloem fiber is a dead component, which is opposite to that of xylem, in which all the components were dead and only one was living. Now, phloem parenchyma is elongated. It is cylindrical cell in which cell wall is made up of cellulose. And you should remember, phloem parenchyma is absent in monocots. It is absent in monocots. And function of phloem parenchyma is to store food material and other substances like latex, resin, and mucilage. Now let us talk about phloem fiber. Phloem fiber, it is the dead component of phloem and it is made up of sclerenchymatous cells. Phloem fiber of jute, hemp are used commercially. So the fibers of jute, flax and hemp are nothing but phloem fibers used commercially. So phloem fibers of jute, hemp are used commercially. What is the function of phloem fiber? Function of phloem fiber is giving mechanical support and to the soft tissues. So it gives mechanical support to the soft tissues. So if you have liked the video, do subscribe, comment and share.